Welcome to Quickcasts from Yoga for First Responders. I'm Eric Brenneman, and in these bite-sized episodes, we'll bring you quick insights and practical tips on the power of yoga, breathwork, mindfulness, and meditation specifically for first responders. Whether you're on a quick break or between calls, we've got a nugget of wisdom to help you stay resilient and focused. Let's dive right in.
Hi everyone, it's Olivia. Today's Quickcast is about one sentence that completely changed how I teach. Information isn't transformation. I first heard a version of this years ago while I was redesigning the Yoga for First Responders curriculum. Our instructional design coach asked me a simple question. What teaching methods are you using? And I answered confidently, I tell them. And she smiled and said, telling isn't teaching. And I swear the world stopped for a second because everything suddenly made sense. Up until that point, I thought that if I explained something clearly enough, people would understand it. And if they understood it, they would change. But that's just not how people work. So from that moment on, I stopped building presentations and instead I started directing experiences. And slides became scenery, manuals became props, stories became the curriculum. Every concept became a mystery waiting to unfold rather than a fact waiting to be explained. I didn't want people to simply understand an idea. I wanted them to feel it because feeling is what transforms us. So this past weekend, I went to see Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and it was fantastic, by the way. And as I sat in the theater, I kept thinking about this idea because anyone could summarize the plot of The Odyssey in like 5 minutes. And you can even read the plot on Wikipedia. You can memorize every character. You can explain how it ends. You'll have the information and probably even be able to repeat it back to someone. But you won't have the experience. You won't feel Odysseus's desperation as he fights to return home. You won't ache alongside Penelope as she waits year after year, refusing to give up hope. You won't be reminded of the people you love or the lengths that you'd go to find your way back home. That's why stories become epic, not because of the plot alone, because of the music, the cinematography, the performances, the conflict, the silence, the emotion. The entertainment industry exists to move us to laughter, to tears, to reflection, to hope. Because emotion turns information into memory, and lived experience turns memory into wisdom. So then it hit me that we often do the exact opposite with yoga. Somewhere along the way, we reduced yoga to just the shapes that we do with our bodies. Warrior two, downward facing dog, triangle, and next pose, and next pose, and next pose. And that's simply information. But transformation happens when movement becomes part of a story. So what if your yoga practice wasn't just 45 minutes of exercise? What if it was your hero's journey? What if that tight hamstring wasn't just a tight hamstring? What if it represented the month you've just survived, the grief you've been carrying, the difficult conversation you've replayed 100 times, the stress you've learned to tolerate instead of process? Suddenly, the pose means something. Suddenly, the breath means something. Suddenly, you're no longer stretching, you're healing, you're integrating, you're teaching your nervous system something new. Imagine yourself in Warrior 2. Your legs start to burn, and everything in your body is asking for relief. But just like the hero in the climactic battle, your breath stays slow and grounded. Your gaze stays steady. You remain calm inside the discomfort. And you're no longer practicing yoga. You're creating a metaphor. You're rehearsing for life. Because your nervous system doesn't learn through explanation, it learns through experience. Years ago, I took one of the most memorable yoga workshops of my life, and I honestly don't remember a single pose we practiced, not one. But I remember exactly how it made me feel. The teacher guided us through the hero's journey while we moved. The class was something called Yoga at the Movies. And there was music, there were metaphors, there was emotion. And I remember laughing and crying. I saw myself differently at the end of that class. And I don't remember the sequence, but I do remember the transformation. The teacher didn't simply guide a yoga class, she created the backdrop for an experience. And I've been thinking about that ever since. Whether you're teaching yoga, leading a meeting, parenting, coaching, giving a keynote, or simply trying to change your own habits, ask yourself, am I just giving information or am I creating an experience? Because they're not the same thing. Transformation requires participation. It requires repetition and emotion. It requires a nervous system that experiences something different than what it experienced yesterday, something unexpected. And that's exactly why I built the Yoga for First Responders protocol and curriculum the way that I did. We don't simply teach people about stress. We don't hand them neuroscience and hope they'll remember it during the worst day of their career. We create experiences where they repeatedly practice regulation inside a safe, structured environment so that one day, when life becomes chaotic, their body already knows what to do. That's the goal. Not memorization, preparation. And the same is true for your own life. Don't just collect information, practice it, repeat it, live it, feel it. The next time you step onto your mat, don't ask yourself, what pose am I doing? Don't wait for the teacher to say what pose you're doing next. Ask, what story am I living through these positions? Because your nervous system doesn't remember poses, it remembers experiences. Every intentional breath, every moment you choose presence over distraction, every time you meet discomfort instead of running from it, you're teaching your body a new way to respond to life. Information might change your mind, but experience changes your nervous system. That's transformation. And at the end of every great story, the hero always returns home changed. Odysseus left Ithaca bound by duty to honor an oath and fight in a war that wasn't truly his own. Like many of us, he believed his greatest battle would be the one that's out in front of him. But instead, it became the one within. 20 years of war, loss, temptation, pride, grief, perseverance, and impossible choices slowly transformed him. And by the time he returned home, what mattered most was no longer glory or conquest. It was love. It was home. It was being beside Penelope for the rest of his life, even if that meant giving up everything else. That's what every meaningful journey does. It changes the traveler. And yoga is no different. We don't practice to become better at poses. We practice so that life changes us with wisdom instead of hardening us with stress. Yoga trained you for the battle within. Thanks for listening. And cut, fade to black.
Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high-stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about Yoga for First Responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app, online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.